And now for our feature presentation.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Botching It Up podcast. Every bruise, bump, and botch. Wrestling, you've been put on notice. Let's get ready to ramble!
What's up? This is the Botching Up podcast number 28. And this week we're watching Wrestle War 1990 Wild Thing. As always, you're with me, Benito, my good friend Basil.
Hey, homeboys, gather around. Some serious stuff is gonna go down for the Wrestle War 90 while the Kings of the Ring all come together and do the right thing. Lex Luger, the Steiners, Nature Boy Sting. Yeah, they all be doing that wild thing.
Oh, that's the rap for the promo video.
I had to try and find something for you.
Did you write that down or did you remember that?
I had to write that down word by word.
Oh.
It's not something I wanted to admit here, but I did that, yeah.
See, knowing you, I thought that would be something that you would just remember. Lock in there.
I mean, I know I'm like a walking, boring statistic machine, but I don't think I can remember that rap. It's too shit.
Okay, so this is part 3 of our 1990s saga. So this took place on February the 25th, 1990. We got 3 championship belts on the line in Greensboro Coliseum in Greensboro, North Carolina. I probably butchered that name. 7,894 fans in attendance. Tuxedo Terry Funk is on commentary with Jim Ross. I'll just get for you here. This is a new statistic for you. 175,000 pay-per-view buys, which, to put in contrast with the last pay-per-view we watched, Royal Rumble, did 260,000. So not too far off the mark of WWF at this point.
Where did you find those pay-per-view buys for WCW?
I just deep down in the internet. It took me a minute to find that.
I did scour through. I couldn't find anything. That's actually really interesting because I thought that the WWF, in comparison to the WCW's buy rates, would be skyrocket. But the fact that there's only 100,000 in it is news to me. Like, I didn't realize they were doing money like this, because we've been told so many times that 1990 to 1995, basically until Eazy-E picked it up, that WCW was making no money whatsoever. So apparently it's not true.
So 1990 is a rough year for WWF, but 91, they absolutely triple the numbers that they're currently doing. So something happens, which we'll get to in the coming months, I guess. But this is about standard for WCW. This is quite high compared to the last ones that, like, Starrcade 3 months ago did 130,000. Capital Combat, which is their next pay-per-view, did 160. So round about the same, a little bit less. It's on average. Comparing
those buy rates of WWF just before the network came in, they're pretty much the same.
Oh, really?
Honestly, yeah. Towards the end of the pay-per-views being paid for, WWE were going down to a low 170, 160, 150. So that really shows that WWE shouldn't be proud of the buy rates that they were doing back then. Can you explain something to me?
Yeah, shoot.
This isn't a joke. Do you have any idea why this pay-per-view was marketed as Wild Thing?
Absolutely no idea.
I've been racking my brain for a long time to try and find some sort of link or reference to the catchphrase apart from the really awful rap, but I came up with nothing.
No, it just seems like all the WCW pay-per-views we're about to watch have an awkward tagline. I made a joke a couple of weeks ago. This is where Vince has got the idea from this year to have all these weird taglines.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's been doing that for a couple of years now.
Right, so the big story going into this show is that Sting got injured back at Clash of Champions. So he's out against Ric Flair, this massive title match they've been building up forever. And instead they've replaced it with Lex Luger. Now, we need to talk a little bit backstage of what's going on with WCW. There's massive financial cuts happening across the business. They want to shrink down the roster to about 28 people. So this guy, Jim Herd, which I think every wrestling fan has heard his name.
Jim Herd was officially named by JR the half-ass mark that he is. So JR's got beef.
Yeah, so he's a TV guy and he's a big wrestling fan, but he has absolutely no idea what he's doing. And he's trying to control the wrestling committee, who at this point, Ric Flair was the head booker of the wrestling committee. And he's pressured them into putting Lex Luger into the main event to try and create a style of Lex Luger. Well, he thought he was at the point Sting was at, but whereas Sting was going to win the championship belt on this night. That was the plan.
This is, just in terms of normal wrestling booking, quite ludicrous, because we watched Clash of Champions 10, which had been broadcast about 2 weeks before this pay-per-view, in which a woman was violently throwing her middle finger around in the crowd at Lex Luger, who was a heel, like a hard heel at this point in time. 2 weeks later, he's presented as the monster meat babyface that is going to take the championship from Ric Flair, because he feels that WCW's biggest babyface at the time, Sting, has had his honor taken away from him. The very fact that they would even try this, a 2 week turnaround with 2 weeks of TV to turn a hard heel into a strong babyface, is actually quite incredible. And you telling me that it came from somebody that didn't really know the business makes all the sense in the world.
So JR and Cornette both said that this was just crazy lazy booking. They've both come up with ideas of people that are on the card who maybe weren't as high profile and maybe wouldn't have done great pay-per-view buys, but people that could have gone in there and had a better match, although we'll get to that in a minute. They could have done a better story with Ric Flair, but instead they had to put a guy that they were pushing. This Jim Herd guy wanted Lex Luger to be the next thing after Sting. So that's the direction they went in. But what's really interesting is I read an interview with Lex Luger that Jim Herd still wanted the belt to be swapped, and now it was going to Lex Luger. All of the wrestling committee said, this is a horrible idea, do not put it on Lex Luger. We're still going to crown Sting at some point. Don't jump the gun on Lex. And even Lex himself was saying backstage that don't put the belt on me, I don't want the belt. I'm not ready for it, I can't be the face of the company, I can't do the right kind of buy rate. Plus also, I've only got Ric Flair to face. You know, Ric Flair can face against anyone. Even Sting at this time could face against anyone on the roster, whereas Lex Luger didn't have that star power.
It sounds very intelligent from the point of Luger, because it's the whole thing is insane in the first place, to try and turn a heel into a face in 2 weeks, but then to give him a championship on top of that, when he actually hasn't even been built up to a main event credible status yet, is just confounding. I I can only imagine JR and Cornette in that room trying to figure out how to politely say you're a fucking idiot to Jim Herd.
Oh, I don't think there was any politeness about it.
But another thing that you just told me about, which I read a little bit about, of Jim Herd trying to cost cut and reevaluate contracts and take some people away and leave them alone. That to me again is insane, because of, like, just looking up and down this card, this is a very slim in the water roster to begin with. There doesn't seem like a hell of a lot of upper mid card to main event talent around. And I mean that's showcased in itself by them turning Luger face and trying to put him in the main event. They didn't really have build up superstars. So I mean, the very fact that Herd was at the same time trying to get rid of people is maybe he was worse than Bill Watts. Like
I think a lot of cuts had been made already. We spoke last week about Tully not coming back to the company because they weren't going to give him the money they'd promised him. And a few other people, like some WCW lifers, had their contracts renegotiated for less money than what they were earning before 1990.
Interestingly, you know, we mentioned during the Clash of Champions 10 main event that the Great Muta didn't really do anything other than smooth his own ego, because every time Ric Flair would get onto the top of the turnbuckle to hang around with Sting, Great Muta would get up on the top of the turnbuckle as well. Well, he was gone by this point. 2 weeks later, he had quit along with the Dragon Master, who was also in the main event for Clash They'd taken their bags and they'd gone straight back to Japan because they thought that they weren't being treated very well.
And what's crazy is apparently the TV ratings are going up and up and up and up and up. WCW at this point is actually doing more business. Ric Flair is controlling the company and he's doing a good job. All of this argument with Jim Herd and then this whole Lex Luger situation is the final nail in the coffin that Ric Flair resigned from the booking committee. He stays on as a active competitor for another 2 years, is it? Before he goes to WWF?
I think he was around by the time of Survivor Series 91, so I don't...
So another year.
I don't think he was... Yeah, he wasn't long for the company. He basically jumped with Mean Mark, really.
So basically around this point, Ric Flair has given up and he's just riding out his contract.
Another potential good opponent for Ric Flair during this time would have been Steve Williams. But again, contract negotiations with him had failed, and he would went off to Japan as well. He'd be the first guy, I think, work for New Japan and All Japan at the same time. He was already gone.
Yeah.
People were leaving the ship at this point, and I mean, considering all of the issues that were going on backstage with the talent at this time, I thought they pulled off a pretty decent pay-per-view.
Well, so this is the point. Everyone is really down on this whole Lex Luger situation, but the actual match was pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised I haven't seen this before, and I solidly enjoyed it, all 40 minutes of it.
So JR considers this, definitely up until this point, Lex Luger's best match, maybe his best match ever.
And I mean, as good as Luger was in this match, you have to say that was all down to Flair.
Oh yeah, Flair made it.
Flair was on a prime level tonight. This was, I mean, it's ridiculous to say, but Ric Flair's peak lasted for about 10 years. This was still the peak of his powers.
I mean, I don't know what they were thinking. Like, there are some legends in this booking committee, but I don't know what they were thinking. So this match starts off with the injured Sting coming out, and the crowd goes crazy. They love him. This is their boy. And then Lex Luger walks out and has to follow that. Why? How does that make any sense?
Again, yeah, almost immediately a misfire off the bat. That they could have either put Sting in a promo halfway through the show, because they had promised it a lot. All of the wrestlers, by the way, were wearing some sort of badge around their arms saying "Get better, Sting" or something.
Stand with Sting or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, apart from Rick Steiner, who just got a piece of paper and sellotaped it to his singlet. Obviously, they couldn't find a band for him. But if you wanted to put Sting in, I think the perfect time was when he came back in the middle of the main event, where Flair was cheating a little bit too much.
Yeah, I don't think we needed to see him before.
No, they could have easily brought him in then, just to stop Flair from cheating a little bit. But I completely agree with you. Putting Luger in after the top babyface, putting the stand-in to follow the top babyface who's injured, it was a silly idea.
Yeah, so no one's cheering for Luger. Ric Flair comes out. People are... Well, it's weird with Ric Flair, isn't it? People are kind of cheering him, but they also know they should be booing him because they love him. Whatever. He comes out and he makes people respect Luger as the face. You know, he plays up the tactics, he does the cheating, he makes Luger look good, he sells those military press slams like crazy, flown all the way across the ring. A fun fact for you here, Ric Flair won his very first World Heavyweight Championship in this very building from Harley Race.
Oh, is it the Starcade? The Starcade
and
match?
It's also Ric Flair's birthday.
Yeah, it's his 41st birthday, and he hails from North Carolina, so this is his home state. Yeah,
so like you said, this match goes 38 minutes, and there's not a boring second throughout.
We have done a whole podcast on Ric Flair and how he can control an environment. And watching this match throughout the duration of it, the insane thing about Ric Flair is not the fact that he's amazing and he's that talented, but that he seems to do it on autopilot.
Yeah.
Like, you're 34 minutes in and Ric Flair's doing the exact right thing at the right time, and I don't genuinely believe he's consciously thinking about it. That is just his impeccable timing and talent for feeling the crowd. But I just wanted to talk about the starting out process a little bit, and why I miss the small things in wrestling that aren't prevalent today. There's certain things that Cody has tried to bring back, but the majority of wrestling fans and wrestlers don't want any time for it. Just the like the ref checking Flair's feet, the rules being talked about for a championship match, the wrestlers ignoring and talking shit. But then when Flair...
that was a really cool stare down at the beginning of the match. Really, really intense.
But one of the most important aspects of Flair is the beginning. The feeling out process to his matches is so important. The way he complains to the ref, he refuses. There's a point where Luger puts his hand up for a test of strength, and Flair circles him for a minute or two. Terry Funk did a great job of explaining that Flair was trying to put his hand down to get Luger to his position, and then Luger grabbed the hand, and Flair went into his agony thing on his knees. And those small moments are building up a character. They're building up what we expect from Ric Flair, which is a dastardly heel, and they're building up from Luger, the powerhouse who's frustrated by these dirty tactics. So he kind of lays out the story of the match like a plot synopsis before he gets started, which is why I think once we get into the action, which is about 10 minutes in, we're already immersed. And we actually saw on this show itself moments in which people tried to pace the match, tried to do the feeling out process, tried to keep running out of the ring to frustrate their opponents, and it was boring.
Yeah,
honestly.
No one does it better.
Flair is the only person that he doesn't make it boring whatsoever. He makes it immersive.
We're about 35 minutes into this thing, and then Sting comes out because Ric Flair is cheating during figure 4 leg holds. He keeps on holding onto the ropes. Sting comes out to try and tell the ref what's going on. Ric Flair continues to beat Lex down, and then Sting is on the sidelines cheerleading Luger on, gets in his face and just like fires him up, and then Luger does this Hulk Hogan comeback, no selling all the moves. He gets thrown into the guardrail and just walks away from it. Ric Flair starts running away because he's scared of him now, but not like in a good way, you know. And then finally we have Arn Anderson and Ole Anderson run out. And then this match gets thrown away as a count out because Lex Luger's outside kind of trying to help the injured Sting. But surely it should have been a DQ for Lex Luger.
So this, again, like the beginning, made no sense at the end. I could see that I was looking at the Andersons throughout this, and I could see that they seem to have consciously done their best not to hit Luger back. Because they could see the stupidity of outside interference with Luger hitting them, but as soon as they hit him, the ref would have to call for a DQ, and it felt a lot like talented veterans trying to cover up a bad finish by bookers. And I really don't understand why we had to finish like this, honestly. That babyface fire that you were talking about, because there's a point where Flair goes in for the kill and he starts attacking the knees, and it's the crucial moment. Then obviously the ref gets knocked out. Luger goes mental. The rack is on, and he looked amazing. Flair and the booking around that managed to make him look so good. There was no need to further try and save him by having a count out, because that actually made him look worse. And
Lex Luger isn't like a huge main eventer at this point, so like, does it even hurt him to lose clean?
He didn't even need to lose clean. If he had lost with dirty tactics, maybe the Andersons beating him up, the ref staying down for a little bit longer, Flair getting the pin, that's a lot more logical and a lot more interesting than a blatant count-out, which the worst part of that count-out is that tries to extend our sense of belief, because it's quite clearly just not logical and it doesn't make any sense.
So the reason this happened is because they thought Sting was going to be out injured until September. Luckily for them, Sting has this same method of healing John Cena has, and he comes back in June. But they thought they were going to have a Lex Luger, Ric Flair program all the way throughout the whole year, pretty much till September. So they were trying to keep Lex Luger strong to carry on. But is it really a big deal to lose to Ric Flair, like the biggest name in all of wrestling?
No, it's not at all. And even if they wanted to carry on the feud, just have him lose dirty. How many times have you seen a 6-month feud throughout the entirety of wrestling, which started with the babyface losing via a dirty pin? Like it just writes itself.
That's 101, really, isn't it?
There were a lot of strange finishes to this entire show. There were a lot of roll-ups and quick wins and dirty tactics, or like a wrestler being thrown into a cameraman for a schoolboy.
Yeah, there's a few matches that are quite unsatisfying. But this match was a lot of fun.
I love this match. I'm surprised, as a Flair mark, I'm surprised I've never seen it before, and I will probably be watching this again.
So the Observer gave it 4.5 stars.
I think that's pretty much right on the money. You could argue that it would go down a quarter star because of the finish, but I think by that point they'd put on such a showcase that you couldn't really possibly give it anything less.
Well, yeah, when I saw how much there was left to go on the show, I didn't even think Lex Luger could go that long.
Luger's performance in this and the way that Ric Flair worked with him just shows you that WWF in 1993 were looking for the next Hulk Hogan, and they spent so much money on the promotion of Lex Luger as the next big thing, and they did a countrywide tour where Lex got in his Lex Express. Yeah. They spent so much money with it, only to squander it completely in one of the worst finishes in history. And Ric Flair's just made this guy in 40 minutes, who 2 weeks ago was a heel. Doesn't that sum it up?
I wonder what they're going to do. Well, we'll find out, I guess, in the coming months what they're going to do to drop the ball with Lex Luger.
You look at results in the future. This is my new product. I've become so frustrated with WWE in the current environment, and I'm so behind with AEW and Impact that this is now my product. And it's actually almost authentic, because we watched Clash of Champions 2 weeks ago and we watched the pay-per-view today, which is the exact amount of time. So it's being authentically built for me. So I'm not going to get any spoilers for it.
Okay, I won't give you any spoilers. Well, maybe not the best match on the card, because probably was the main event, but my favourite match on the card had to be the tag team match.
Which one? There's 5.
There's so many tag team matches, it must have pissed you off.
But can you? But before we get into this one, because this one was quite obviously the best thing on the show up until the main event. Do you have any idea why there were so many tags on this pay-per-view? But
there was on Clash as well, wasn't there?
It's really, I've never seen a promotion before that had more tags than singles.
Right, and we got 3 championship matches, and 2 of them are tag team championship matches.
That's the amusing thing to me. Apparently, Jim Herd wanted to thin the roster out, and he wanted like 28 guys or something. So you just have, 10 tag teams and Ric Flair.
Yeah, I guess and Norman the Lunatic as the opener, yeah?
Oh, Christ, man.
No, I don't know why there's so many tag teams. But, I mean, you got, like, look at the tag teams you got. They're absolute legends. Rock and Roll Express versus Midnight Express, we'll talk about now. But we've also got the Road Warriors, the Freebirds, the Steiners, and the Andersons.
Yeah, what a stacked card that was.
Yeah, so the Rock and Roll Express versus the Midnight Express. And this is just one of those legendary rivals. I've seen the Rock and Roll Express. I've seen a few of their matches because Ring of Honor did a thing on them when they returned a couple years ago, but I don't think I've ever seen a proper Midnight Express match.
Ricky Morton also appeared on AEW Dynamite a couple of months ago and hit a perfect Canadian Destroyer.
Yeah, they're back full time as competitors.
He's still got it, man. Did you a quick shout out to Cornette's promo before this match? He has a refrain of how some things never change. How statues are pulled down and governments are thrown, but some things will never change. The Midnight Express beating the Rock and Roll Express will never change. It was a great little selling point. It took only a minute, and he got everything that he wanted to say said, and he made it interesting and exciting.
Yeah, man, Cornette's like one of the best promos ever of all time.
I mean, Cornette was great in this match as well.
Cornette did everything in his power to try and make his team win this match. He was up on the apron every other minute. He even squared off with the ref at the one point, and the ref shoved him down. He had the tennis racket out. I'm pretty sure Cornette and JR are actually lifelong best friends backstage. Kayfabe, in this match, JR was ripping it out of Cornette that the ref should eject him, that he has no place being ringside, that he's the worst manager of all time, or the most despicable manager.
You know what? Jim Cornette and the Midnight Express's heel tactics was so... They did so many things. It was unrelenting to the point where I was into this match, and I was like, Cornette is such a fucking little cockroach, man. Like, because he was just popping up, and he was bumping like a fiend,
Yep.
and he was screaming and hollering, and it actually genuinely felt annoying. Like, not in a storyline way, in a real way, he became annoying because he wouldn't leave the match alone. Apart from when they got into their crucial action points where he left off a bit. But I mean, that's a great manager, and he actually, I'm amazed myself that he managed to pull me in enough so that I wanted to see the Rock and Roll Express beat the Midnight Express, and that is a very rare feeling after watching wrestling for 20 years.
Yeah, you're usually always rooting for the bad guys.
Yeah. No, I wanted to see the Rock and Roll Express murder him.
So the Rock and Roll Express did get the win. After watching this match, I get the feeling that Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels are pretty much based off these two teams.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think Jannetty and Michaels were basically the Young Bucks, and Rock and Roll Express were the Hardys.
Right.
Really.
I'm kind of surprised they weren't called the Rockers Express now. So many expresses back then.
I'm glad that they left that one up. Well, in the mid-90s, I think WWF had a very short-term effect of having the new Rock and Roll Express and the new Midnight Express, which lasted about 2 months. I think it was the same year that they got fake Diesel and fake Razor Ramon, so that says everything about that.
Is that when Jim Cornette was with WWF?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure Jim Cornette was a fan of it.
No, I can't imagine he is, because this is his baby, right? The Midnight Express.
Yeah. These are his two favorite tag teams of all time. That he will not stop talking about these guys. He talks about these guys every single episode of his podcast.
So you know me, I love tag team wrestling. This was my favorite match of the night. The Observer gave it 4 1/4 stars, so literally a quarter less than the main event.
I gave it 4. I can't see anybody giving this less than 4. Even if the rating system is entirely subjective, I can't see anybody not thinking this was a great match. Also, I just want to shout out to Terry Funk for doing a great job in this match. He had a really good little monologue where he talked about just how far away 2 feet in a ring can be, while some submissions were being applied. And then they did a nice shot round the ring, probably entirely by accident, just as he was saying that. And he added some sort of psychological structure to a match in general by just signifying that while it doesn't look a long way away, it can be in the wrestler's mind, which is a really good save for the guy trying to get the tag and he's too near his tag partner.
Yeah. Terry Funk is amazing. I really hope he stays on commentary for a while as we're doing this.
He did mention briefly during the commentary that he had classed himself as retired. So this was his then retirement.
Yeah, this is his first retirement, right? But I think he's quite quickly about to come back out of retirement.
I can't actually remember what it was, but I think maybe 2 clashes before this, he'd had that barn burner with Ric Flair, like the 4.5 star classic. So I think he'd literally just sat down at the commentator's booth. I don't know why he was wearing pumpkin innards on his suit, though.
What, at this show?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe...
He had some weird orange gunk streamers.
Maybe Tuxedo Terry only has one tuxedo. It's the one he used at Halloween Havoc.
I love the fact that JR is just calling him Tuxedo Terry now.
Yeah, it's that is his name, and that's fine with me.
And to Funk, Ross is Jimbo Diddley.
So the King of the Deathmatch stuff that hasn't even happened yet.
No, that's like 4 years away.
Yeah,
Terry Funk is a crazy.
And he's
bastard.
retired currently. So, but I do love him on commentary, and he's making these WCW shows really fun to watch. So I hope he stays on for a while.
So I saw a recent video of him calling out somebody who was pretending to be him online. He's just, hey,
What? Why would you?
I'm gonna beat your ass. I don't think he knows how the internet works. He just thinks he thinks somebody is pretending to be him, but he said it in such a sweet way, like he didn't realize that this happened to everyone, and he called out that whoever was pretending to be Terry Funk online and said he was gonna like basically murder him in his sweet little voice of his.
Okay, brilliant. Well, like so on Twitter or something, someone like with a fake account.
Yeah.
Right.
So don't start a fake Terry Funk account, everyone.
Legitimately scary guy, even though he looks like you could have a lot of fun just
The sweetest
having a beer
guys
with
always
him.
are. Have you
Yeah.
noticed that the sweetest guys always have like the softest voices, but they're also the scariest?
It's because they have to grow up mean, they've got bullied. So let's start with the opening then, shall we? And then do the rest of these matches.
Sure.
So the first match on the card is Bud Sawyer and Kevin Sullivan beating the Dynamic Dudes, which is Johnny Ace, or John Laurinaitis, most people would know him as, and Shane Douglas, which is a weird team.
One of our favourites on this podcast, Shane Douglas.
Our favourite actor of all time.
Yeah.
Oscar worthy.
It's amazing how people in wrestling can start somewhere and end up somewhere completely different through arse kissing, isn't it? John Laurinaitis, at this point in 1990, didn't look long for the wrestling world. He was terrible in this.
Yeah.
He was actually the worst person in this entire match. He couldn't work at all. And I assume, JR doesn't like him very much. It sounds like through backstabbing and ass-kissing, he's gotten to the position that he has in WWE. But this was a weird start to the show. I'm not really sure why this was an opener.
No, Johnny Ace and Shane Douglas don't mix well at all. And they're very cheeky for the baby faces. They almost feel like they're the heels, but then Kevin Sullivan and Mad Dog are proper animalistic heels. Yeah.
There's also the weird idea of this is Kevin Sullivan and Buzz Sawyer didn't get a entrance. We only got an entrance for the Dynamic Dudes. So, and the way that the match was booked, the Dynamic Dudes were coming out on top and beating the old vets every single time. Every move that Kevin Sullivan and Mad Dog tried would be thwarted by the young upcoming faces. So everything in this match pointed to the Dynamic Dudes picking up the win and pretty easily. And what we got was the opposite. Because I can only assume, apparently Shane Douglas was pissing everybody off backstage because he didn't like the material he was given, and Johnny Ace was trying to get a raise. It felt like this match was changed on the fly.
Yeah, apparently Johnny Ace was politicking backstage even when he was a jobber in WCW. So I think a lot of people didn't like him. But I think because they were like the young guys and a bit like Tom Zeke and Brian Pillman, they were kind of the next big thing. So maybe they were meant to get the win, get the rub, get
Honestly,
a push.
Watching the tags on this pay-per-view, the only young guys that stood out to me completely, and you know the answer to this, is the Steiners. The Dynamic Dudes had nothing going on. They seemed, and I'm not throwing shade, because genuinely, because when we seem to always dig on Shane Douglas on this podcast, and in the mid-90s there, I think he was one of the best wrestlers in the world. But here, Johnny Ace and Shane Douglas just seem completely gormless. The crowd are cheering them regardless because they're young, attractive faces.
Because they're blonde.
Yeah. But they don't seem to be registering it or playing into it whatsoever. They just seem to be stumbling through this match with the help of Sullivan.
Yeah, they're very green. And then it doesn't help that Sullivan and Mad Dog are like such experienced pros. They know what their character is, and they're roughhousing these two and then dragging them through a brawl.
What's mad about this match is that this was the last time, I think, that you'd see 3 of the 4 of these competitors in a WCW ring.
Right, well, I want to get onto that, because I wanted to talk about this Mad Dog Maddox guy. I talked that I felt bad for him about during the Clash, because he didn't get much screen time, even though he was beating himself up. So I thought maybe this guy was going to be someone to join my stable of lost 90s wrestlers, going in with Ronnie Garvin and PN News. Yeah, so he botches a dive, and he lands on his wrist very funny, and you can even see as he's making the walkout, Kevin Sullivan's trying to celebrate, and Mad Dog is ripping his arm down, and he's trying to hold his wrist. And if you look, it's bent the wrong way. So
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, it looks really rough. So he sustained a fractured wrist, and he would actually be out of wrestling for about a year. Never to be seen on WCW TV again, but he came back to do some house shows. But then about 2 years, so in 92, he dies of a heart attack due to a drug overdose.
So this was the last time we properly saw him on television.
Yeah, it really is. And I thought I'd find some fun facts about this guy, and I can put him in my stable of lost 90s guys, but it turns out he's a bit of a dick. His way of making money is that he would go to the territories and start up a wrestling school, get a load of teenagers to pay him money, and then bounce after 1 or 2 sessions, or not even open the school, just take the money.
Is this the guy that The Undertaker was talking about?
Yeah, he stole money from The Undertaker, who is actually on this card.
That's amazing.
They were sharing a locker room after he swindled him.
I remember Taker talking about that story of like some guy phoning him up and he was like, yeah, come to my backyard, kid. And then he just was never there. So Taker got pissed off and just took his dogs home. And apparently this was Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's this guy. I did find one cool fact about him, though, that in, was it 85, 86, something like that, he was in a match dubbed The Last Battle of Atlanta with Wildfire Tommy Rich in this massive steel cage match, and the cage was slightly bigger than the ring. And most people say that this was the inspiration for the Hell in a Cell match that would come 10 years later.
Okay, well, that's cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
Sorry, what show was it? What promotion was it?
I don't know the promotion. I just know that the show was called The Last Battle of Atlanta.
I'm going to look that up. That's interesting. So the actual match, what did you think?
It was a dud, I think.
I mean, not because of Kevin Sullivan and Buzz Sawyer. I mean, even though those two seemed like they didn't really want to be there that night.
I feel like they didn't want to be facing off with these two guys, who they were probably jobbers at this point. Shane Douglas and Johnny Ace.
Well, again, they were out of the company shortly, weren't they? So this was their big thank you, fuck you, bye. I thought Sawyer tried to help out Johnny Ace and Douglas quite a bit by playing into the crowd, doing like biting, trying to do the heelish tactics. It looked like Sullivan couldn't really be bothered. He put way more work into getting the Norman the Lunatic over at Clash 10.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. The Observer gave this 2 stars.
I also gave this 2 stars.
Oh, I would have gone slightly under.
Well, I mean, it was fine for what it was. It wasn't atrocious, but it was okay to build up the crowd a little bit. I think
good opener, I guess.
The thing that really killed the crowd was the next match.
We're backstage with Norman, the lunatic. He's with Missy, is it? And he tricks her into giving him a kiss for good luck because he needs it against Cactus Jack. So he ain't as dumb as he looks, is he?
This, once again, 2 weeks ago at the Clash of Champions, Jim Cornette literally called him a paedophile. This time he's pretending to be stupid with teddy bears around his neck, wearing a Pee Wee Herman spinner hat, coaxing Missy Hyatt into giving him a hug, and then a kiss, and then multiple kisses. What? Why is everybody into Norman the Lunatic? Why is he such a fan favourite? The guy's a creep.
Yeah, he's a creep.
I didn't realise that Norman the Lunatic went on to play Bastian Booger.
I don't even know who that is.
It's a early 90s WWF jobber. He basically wore like a giant nappy.
Oh, okay. Well, it suits him. He seems to like these fucked gimmicks.
Yeah.
Whatever. JR has the line of the night for me. He says, "This isn't a match of wits. This is a match of nitwits."
Great stuff, man. Great stuff.
Because Cactus Jack has got the gimmick of, what was it? It was like he's into self-help guides or something.
Yeah. Well, I assume the only reason that this match exists was because they needed a singles match for the card, and they decided to put 2 people together because both of their gimmicks were being stupid.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and also they're big men that do a lot of brawling, so on paper they fit. And you know what? It wasn't an awful match. The Observer fucking rips it apart, but I actually kind of enjoyed it. I don't know if I'm just being biased because it's Mick Foley.
Once again, trying to explain this in the present. So, Not only does... You got this guy called Norman the Lunatic, right? And you've got Cactus Jack.
Cactus Jack Manson.
Cactus Jack Manson. And Cactus Jack Manson not only does not get an entrance, but loses in 6 or 7 minutes to Norman the Lunatic, who is wheezing his way through this entire match. You see, there's a point in both Norman the Lunatic matches that I've seen so far, about halfway, the 4 or 5 minute mark, where he like halfway can't breathe anymore, and he's just like literally trying to walk a little bit faster, and whoever's against him, Kevin Sullivan or Cactus Jack, has to start playing to the crowd to let him catch his breath a little bit.
Well, I feel like Foley isn't even doing that. He makes this guy work fast. Because Foley, I think, is one of these new guys that likes to have a faster pace. Also, he does his crazy shit jumping onto the concrete. So I think
Why was he doing mental backdrops in this? Like, really? Did he have to sell that hard to the extent that it is going to hurt his body for Norman the Lunatic?
Well, I don't think it's for Norman. I think Foley is just being like undervalued at this point, because he has proved himself in the late 80s, right? Already, but like you said, the last show, this show, sub 10-minute matches on big shows. I think he's just trying to impress the guys backstage.
Yeah, I guess so. I did like halfway through this match. Jim Ross's biggest compliment for it is that it was strange, and instead of being polite, Funk just went straight into shitting on it, and then talked about the main event. That's
surprising, because Funk and maybe Foley gets Funk's respect in a couple more years. He hasn't got it yet.
If anything, this is a good thing to put on Cactus Jack's CV. I mean, it was an awful match. It was dreadful, but it didn't drag. No, it didn't. Norman, sure. It was pretty entertaining for what it was, and that's entirely on Foley.
Yeah.
What did the Observer give this one? I gave it a star.
I think they gave it a dud.
Okay.
Oh no, they gave it a star. They gave it a star.
Yeah.
So then we get the Express versus the Express, and after that, we got the Road Warriors versus the Skyscrapers. We have the Road Warriors and Paul Ellering backstage with Gordon Sully. We also had an interview right at the top of the show with Teddy Long explaining that one of the Skyscrapers is out, and that we've got a new surprise tag partner up with Mark Calloway. Mark Calloway only joined the Skyscrapers at the beginning of this month, by the way. And now there's already a new partner for him. And Gordon Sully suspects that this guy no-showed, but Terry Long's trying to convince us otherwise, that he's scouted this other guy to join because he's better.
So this is really depressing, because I was really up on the confrontation between the new Skyscrapers and the Road Warriors at the Clash of Champions. I thought it was a really effective 10-minute brawl that sold the pay-per-view quite well, and I thought that Skyscrapers came off really well in that as well.
Yeah.
And really, I think Dan Spivey is the guy that ruined The Undertaker's chances in WCW. You can blame Dan Spivey for being the guy that created The Undertaker, because according to pretty much everybody, Dan Spivey skipped the television tapings the week before for money reasons, and also he said in a shoot he didn't like the way that the Road Warriors were treating Mark Calloway, and he didn't want to work with the Road Warriors, so he just skipped town, and he couldn't be bothered to turn up for this. But in turn, it also kind of killed The Undertaker's career in WCW, because you remember the Clash of Champions brawl, right?
Yeah.
It was really effective, it was fast-paced, it was exciting.
Yeah.
And then we got to this match, and I've never seen a 5-minute Chicago street fight before. I don't know whether you have. And
I think the Dudleys had a few when they were pushing up on weight in TNA.
But yeah, probably. But you know what I mean? Like, I feel like if Dan Spivey hadn't of dropped out of this, then this probably would have gone 15-20 minutes.
Yeah, because this is pretty much the death of the Skyscrapers now. Like, they're done.
This was a complete and utter afterthought.
Yeah.
Like, Undertaker was basically tossed out of the ring like a jobber, and so that they could start on the new faction, or the new feud.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's a shame for Mark Calloway, because he showed promise in the last match. And then obviously later in this very year, he goes on to WWF. So, and we even said that as a Skyscraper, he's got the look. He looks like he could be a main event player even in this gimmick of WCW. So yeah, you're right. It's what I find crazy is how Gordon Sully calls the guy out on pay-per-view. Says, "Oh no, he just no-showed," and then Teddy Long awkwardly has to be like, "Oh no, I scouted these other guys."
I guess that was the business back in the day. Like, he didn't mess around with that. But Vince had a different approach to things. He just wouldn't talk about it because he thought it made the WWE look weak, I think. WCW had no problem with just calling somebody out for not working professionally. I do want to mention that the Road Warriors promo, I did really enjoy it. Hawk states that the Warriors have not only slept in alleys, streets and gutters in Chicago, but have actually put 16 guys in hospital in preparation for this match.
Just in preparation for this one match.
16. I don't know where he got that number from. And for no apparent reason, they also let me know that Paul Ellering has just been to Tokyo.
Okay. Back off holiday.
I love the guys like the Road Warriors and the 80s coked up WWE wrestlers. They talk so fast and so loud that you don't actually pay attention to what they're saying. And if you like rewind it once or twice and actually listen to every word that they're saying, it usually becomes hilarious because they're talking so fast and so loud so that you won't be able to hear what they're actually saying to you.
Which is usually like nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing of importance. It's just the intensity.
I don't know what's the significance of 16 guys is, but I mean...
So Legion of Doom come out into this match on motorbikes looking like absolute monsters.
So good.
That they're just going to murder people, which was their aim. They did do that. It was a weird street fight. The only weapon really used was the guardrail. But it was a fist fight, really. And then Ron Simmons and Butch Reed walk out. So Woman had scouted them last show, we kind of worked out maybe what she was doing. But now it seems like Teddy Long has scouted them.
Yeah, woman's gone.
Yeah. So they come out to have Teddy Long's back. Teddy Long gets thrown out of the ring, at which point these two catch him, and then suddenly now they're a team. So Skyscraper's officially done with this match. At this match. And the next storyline going forward, I guess, is... Did they have a team name?
Doom.
Butch Reed
Doom.
and Ron Simmons? Oh, yeah. Are they still called that without the mask?
I would assume so.
Rubbish name.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing's a bit rubbish, isn't it? You've got talents like Butch Reed and Ron Simmons, and you're playing them with stupid masks and stuff. Like, look how good they looked in those suits. Why have they been under a mask for so long? This was the match I also noticed where the entranceway... The ramp is so weird. It's built like a really bad children's slide. Did you notice? It's got like a top bit and then a really bad little slide that they have to kind of awkward. So if like they start running, they have to slow down again for the little.
It was steep, wasn't it?
Period, and then start running again. Very strange stuff. They had plenty of space there to make a bigger slide.
Compared to the Clash, which was freaking massive.
Yeah. They went a little bit too low on budget. Maybe that's a Jim Herd thing.
Right.
I don't really have much to say about this match.
Yeah,
I was very, very disappointed with it.
Yeah, Road Warriors won. It was one of those matches that wasn't really a match. It was just kind of a segment building to a new feud. Which is a shame, because it's exactly what Road Warriors did on the last pay-per-view.
Which was really, really good. That's why I'm so sad about it. Spivey apparently would come back as the Skyscrapers once again, once Mark Calloway had already gone. And for a little tiny period of time, the Skyscrapers consisted of Dan Spivey and a green Sid Vicious. So,
when's that happen?
Starcade. So we got that to look forward to.
Of this year?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that is a dud on... The Observer.
I gave it a star. I thought, the true dud for me was the next match. I actually fell asleep during this match, legitimately.
Which was weird, right? So this is the NWA United States Tag Team Championship match. And this, for context, is actually a rematch. So there was a tournament for the belt, which ended on the very last TV show, which was Brian Pillman and Tom Zeke beating the Freebirds, and they rematched at the very next show.
The booking in WCW right now is all over the place. You had Brian Pillman and the Z-Man go 10 minutes with the Mod Squad at Clash of Champions, not as champions. You just had them go 10 minutes with the Jobber team. Then you give them belts on the last television before the pay-per-view instead of doing it on Clash. And then you expect us to be into a match that has had no build-up whatsoever, where the Freebirds have just come in. You've currently got new champions that have been champions for about 7 days, and then you make it go 25 minutes.
Yeah, 25 minutes. This was a slog.
Was this... Am I looking too far into this, or was the Chicago street fight 5 minutes because plans changed and it became an angle, and that was actually supposed to have more time and this was supposed to be about 10?
Quite possibly. Yeah, you might have hit the nail on the head there, because 25 minutes for this is far too long. Seeing as though that the Steiners and the Andersons get about 15 minutes after this.
And it was just incredibly boring. Like, there were so many chin locks, rest holds, sleeper holds, which was very surprising considering the Freebirds were a part of it.
So, yeah, the Freebirds came out and the crowd was so hot, and they even got on the mic and did some, like, awesome stuff. Pillman and Tom Zeep came out, they played the music. This was incredibly cheesy, but it worked for the crowd at the time. They played the Freebirds' music and danced and took the piss out of the Freebirds. And going into the match, you're like, oh yeah, okay, this is for the belt. The crowd's super into it. All these guys are charismatic. And then 2 minutes into the match, that's it. It just fell off a cliff.
This was the sort of match where in the current era you would hear CM Punk chants. There was just nothing going on. I don't know whether, again, I'm not sure whether Jimmy Garvin, Michael Hayes had issues backstage, but I've seen some Freebirds matches. I mean, to be fair, Terry Gordy is a big part of their act, but those two together, I've seen them light crowds up. You've seen Michael Hayes light a crowd up as well. Like, you've seen him just as a manager go mental. Mm-hmm. They were bored here. They couldn't be bothered whatsoever. This was worse than like a house show match.
Well, I think they were doing it on purpose. I think they were sandbagging because they didn't want to do the job for Brian Pillman and Tom Zeke.
You think?
Yeah, so these two guys were loved backstage by the booking committee. They were meant to be the next big thing. And I don't know if it was this match or just the title run as a whole, which I don't think lasts very long. But they completely turned on Tom Zeke. It turned out that Tom Zeke has the look, but has a real shit attitude, and he's already politicking. Whereas Brian Cage, super cool Pillman. Guy. Brian Pillman, super cool guy, got all the moves, he's innovative, he's got this new style that everyone's looking for in the early 90s, and they really wanted to push him before all the stuff that happens to him later in the 90s. So, but they completely turned off Tom Zeke. But right now they love these two, so I'm thinking, they're trying to squash the Freebirds by making these two guys look better.
Tom Zink, I don't think had much of anything. I've seen him in 90, I've seen him in 92. I don't get the gimmick, I don't get the charisma. He was trash in the ring in this match. He was really letting literally everybody down. And I think Brian Pillman was so far removed from Zink's talent. That was only properly seen when Brian Pillman got into a tag with Steve Austin and people started to notice. I mean, Jim Ross said that he noticed early on, and you're telling me the backstage people noticed early on. I think what I'm saying is that Pillman could have gone far a lot quicker without Zink by his side. But I do feel sorry for this tag because I don't really know do they rub people the wrong way? Because there's no reason that the Mod Squad should have gone 10 minutes with these two. And now the Freebirds go 25 minutes with these two and just put sleeper holds on them. Another thing I wanted to mention, by the way, Michael Hayes puts sleeper holds on both guys for 2 or 3 minutes. We later learn that Tom Zink's finishing move is a sleeper hold.
What is it? Yeah.
First of all, why is his finishing move a sleeper hold? And second of all, Michael Hayes must have known that, right? So
sure.
It completely adds to your idea that they were purposely sandbagging, that they didn't want anything to do with putting this team over, which might well have also been why the match just dragged so long. Mm. Even the finish came out of nowhere.
Yeah, It felt like nobody in this match really wanted to be there. I feel like there must have been some talking, some arguments before this night or on the night.
This was a plodding, lazy match.
Yeah, this was some 90s politics right here, for sure. Completely swing the other way. You got the Anderson. Well, they were announced here as the Anderson brothers, which isn't always necessarily true. Sometimes they're cousins. I heard sometimes they're billed as father and son, which I don't know how you could believe.
Yeah, can you imagine? And I know exactly which is which as well. Old Anderson must have been so pissed off with that.
Versus the Steiner brothers, and this is for the World NWA Tag Team Championship. Like you said, the Steiners walk out with the sign and the bands about Sting's revenge, which plays on to the finish later on in the night in the main event. And I think I've already told you, but Arn Anderson is my guy in this era. I love him.
Arn's great.
So the Steiners take control of this match straight away, and then pretty much take control of the ring. It became like a bit of a territory thing. The guys kept throwing each other out of the ring and trying to control the ring, and it was a wild brawl. And actually, I would have preferred if this match went longer than the last one. I feel like when the match, like you said, the match ended really quickly in a roll-up, and I feel like both teams still had a lot more to give.
So this is why the pacing is so strange, man. Like, you have the Anderson brothers versus the Steiner brothers willing to work with each other, wanting to work with each other, with the 4 talents that are involved. Why would you not give this match the time? This was the match to give the time. Also, pacing-wise, it makes perfect sense, because if you got the Rock and Roll Express, Midnight Express, nobody's following that. They all went out to prove that they saw 5 tag matches on the card, and they said, right, well, we're going to be the only tag match you remember. But if you've got the Skyscrapers match and the Freebirds match in between, make them short, calm the crowd down if you're going to have this amount of tag matches, and then give them a longer tag match right at the end, which is actually decent. These guys worked really well together. They gelled really well. And it was another example of old guys knowing how to pace a match and knowing how to work it. Once again, Ole Anderson and Arn Anderson were playing around, moving around, being very suspicious of getting into close contact, coming out of the ring, going back into the ring. And it made sense, because it felt like they were being disrespected by a younger team that were better than them. Which is the story, really, that the Freebirds and Zink and Pillman should have been playing. But the Steiners and the Andersons here did it really well.
I do think we're going to see these two teams go at it again
I hope
later
so.
down the road.
They had a arm injury angle, so I really hope we do see another match.
I'm pretty sure we do, but not to my knowledge. But it's got to happen, surely, at some point.
Have you seen the Capital Combat card?
I looked at it briefly. It actually doesn't look too bad.
The only thing I know about it is, I'm pretty sure, is RoboCop.
Yeah, RoboCop turns up. He's involved.
Yeah, I really like this match. I really like the period of time where announcers would say ham hawk. I do miss that as a thing. I really love the Steiners. They're always entertaining. They're great athletes. Scott is just... Scott gets that Frankensteiner out, man. Ugh.
Yeah, and then he just... Oh, the finish where he just boots Arn Anderson in the face, then grabs the small package.
Awesome.
It's weird how the finish happened, but they nailed it. Again, it's one of those things where like the actual guys are doing their job perfectly. It's just the bookers that have screwed up.
This was a good match.
The Observer gave it 2.25 stars, which I guess seeing as though it felt like it could have gone twice as long is fair. But I don't know.
I don't know. I don't really see 2.25. I gave it 3.25. There's definitely more that could have been done, and sometimes it was a little too slow to be great. But there was a lot of potential here, and there was a lot of good stuff going on.
And then we talked about the main already, Ric Flair, Lex Luger, and then the match ends really with kind of a chaotic brawl, an injured Sting trying to run away from a massive brawl of all 6 guys, and then that's it. That's how.
Also, shout out to Luger absolutely rocking a tracksuit which was somewhere between the 80s and the 90s in his promo, and also Flair. Did you notice this? How many times have you watched a wrestler count on his fingers, and you're always surprised that they never get it wrong?
What? They don't.
You know when they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna beat you up 8 times," and they put up 8.
Oh, right.
Me personally, I always expect somebody to mess it up. This time, of all people to mess it up, was Ric Flair. He says he's a 6-time world champion and puts up 7 fingers. So,
Fair enough. Those interviews before the matches, Ric Flair's was amazing. Well, because it's Ric Flair, of course it is. Lex Luger one was a bit painful. He's a very bad pro.
it was better than his Clash of Champions 10 promo.
Did you notice though that they made
because
a point to say this was taped earlier today?
No, I didn't see that.
I think it was Terry Funk that said
His
that.
Clash of Champions 10 promo, he didn't understand the use of first, second, and third person. So I'm glad that he was just, at least speaking in names rather than you and I.
So, and in between the two promos, we cut back to the commentary team where JR and Terry Funk kind of hype up the match. And then Funk does a better job at selling Luger's own match than Lex Luger did. And even the crowd, hearing what Funk is saying, go crazy.
Well, I don't really understand why they ended the show with the commentary team. That's one thing I don't really get.
Oh, that's like a legitimate sports thing, isn't it? Back when, in the 80s and 90s, it was meant to look like a regular sport.
I guess maybe it's just alien to me, but I thought the main event action going off on the air is perfect as it is, really. But, I mean, very small gripe. What was your favourite match on the show, then?
Oh, 100%. The Express versus Express was...
Oh, really?
Yeah, for me.
Okay.
Although that's my... But critically, the Ric Flair Lex Luger match was the best match of the night.
Lex Luger Ric Flair was my favourite.
I think it was also just so much of a surprise.
The Expresses were closely followed second. Least favourite match?
Whoa. Probably the... Skyscrapers versus Animal versus Hawk, because other than the main event, this was the only match really coming out of Clash that had been built up.
Yeah.
So I was kind of really into it, and then
it had also been built up well, which
yeah.
is the saddest thing, I think.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with the Freebirds, Pillman and Zink, just because it was so boring. It physically put me to sleep, and people say that in an exaggerated manner. I physically fell asleep. I was planning on watching this entire show last night, and I had to watch some of it today.
It was a slug, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was surprising how long it went.
There was a 4-minute chin lock on that thing.
Overall rating, I give it... Okay, there's only really 2.5 strong matches on the card, so I'll just give it a 3.
Out of 5?
Yeah.
So a 6 out of 10.
Oh, you want it out of 10?
Come on, man.
You're all over the place. Okay, I'll give it 5, right bang in the middle.
Okay. I thought that Flair Luger was a classic. I thought the Express matches were classics. I enjoyed Anderson Steiner's. I'm going to give it a 7.
Okay.
I'm going to give it a strong 7. That was a 7.
So this is your favorite. Is this your favourite we've seen so far during the 90s?
I'm pretty sure I gave Clash of Champions 10 and 8. I might regret that, but there it is.
You got really excited about the Clash.
Yeah, so this is the second best one so far.
Okay, so part 4 of the 90s saga. We're back over with WWF, watching WrestleMania 6.
I'm not looking forward to this one too much, I gotta admit.
This is a big one. A lot of matches.
How many matches on the card? 12?
Yeah, something like that. Now, I am actually looking forward to it. Not so much, really, the show, because it's going to be a slog. But I'm really looking forward to talking to you because there's so much shenanigans around this WrestleMania. So much bullshit backstage and on camera.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I think it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about.
It's in the Toronto Sky Dome, right?
I think so, something like that.
It's their first big WrestleMania in Canada.
And then the week after that, we're back with WCW for Capital Combat, which is in May.
Thank God.
We know which team you're on.
I'm looking forward to Capital Combat. I will sit through Wrestle. I should probably start it as soon as we finish this podcast because it's going to take me an entire week to watch. How are we going to finish these endings, man? These endings are so dreadful.
We need a better ending.
Last week, I'm pretty sure you just edited it off. You couldn't even be bothered to do the bye bit.
That's because I think we didn't do a buy.
I just finished the sentence and you just cut it. Dead.
Like, share, and subscribe to keep it botched up, brother.